So these are the latest and greatest second generation AirPods Pro, now with USB-C charging so we can finally ditch the lightning cable, or at least eventually ditch the lightning cable once we upgrade to an iPhone 15. Now these latest generation AirPods Pros, just like the previous lightning editions, are still arguably some of the best all-around earbuds if you have an iPhone. They just have a nice well-rounded set of features like very good active noise cancellation, probably some of the best-in-class transparency mode, seriously good call quality, they have tight integration with the Apple ecosystem, there's Find My functionality to help you find them in case you misplace them, and with these new versions you have the convenience of USB-C, and you can even charge them with the same cable that you use to charge your iPhone 15. But other than the change to USB-C, they actually did include a few new features with these, including lossless audio with their upcoming Vision Pro headset, as well as an increased dust resistance rating. So yes, a little bit better for sports in that respect than the last version with Lightning. But they also have some new features that came alongside iOS 17 that the previous Lightning AirPods Pros also got via software update, including adaptive audio, conversation awareness, as well as a personalized volume feature. And I was basically curious about how all those features would work in sports scenarios, like what happens with adaptive audio when I'm riding my bike, and the same thing goes for the personalized volume feature. How about if I'm in a loud gym versus running outside? Do those features actually hurt or help? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. So first off, these new versions now have a dust resistance rating of IP54 versus the IPX4 from the previous generations. So in theory, they should be more resistant to dust. In terms of water resistance, that IP54 rating means that they're protected from splashes of water. So basically, you don't want to submerge them. Showering with them probably isn't a good idea either, and you may also want to be careful in heavy rain. But in terms of sweat resistance, although I do prefer a higher water resistance rating for sports, I actually haven't had any problems with these, the previous generation with Lightnings, or even the original AirPods Pros. And I'm a pretty heavy sweater as well. And then when it comes to fit and security, these should be secure enough for sports like running, weight training, high intensity interval training, as well as road biking. In fact, I tend to grab these quite often for running as well as the gym. Where I don't trust these quite as much are for sports like mountain biking, more rugged trail running, as well as rock climbing. Now, under normal circumstances with those sports, they actually do tend to stay put. It's just more that with those kinds of sports, there's an increased risk of them falling out since they don't have wings or fins like earbuds that are more sport specific. So for stuff like light mountain biking, probably fine for the most part, but if you were to crash, there's a pretty good chance one of them is going to pop out. And then with trail running, again, probably fine for most trail running, but what I found is that on steeper downhill sections that are kind of sustained, that constant pounding of footsteps ever so slowly starts to dislodge them from my ears, and I just have to make sure to readjust them from time to time. And then with rock climbing, again, probably fine unless you take a fall where one of them may pop out. So overall, in terms of fit, they do work well for the most part, but not necessarily the most secure out there either, but they certainly work for most of the common activities. So when it comes to active noise cancellation and transparency modes, this is where earbuds kind of get interesting when they're used for sports. And I think this has a lot to do with your particular environment, as well as your personal preference of what mode you like to use with the activities that you like to do. So while everyone does have their personal preference, I'll just kind of give a rundown of what I prefer. So while I'm at the gym, I certainly prefer noise cancellation so I can drown out other conversations and concentrate on my workout. And these do a great job in that department where they do a very good job at filtering out all the sounds that are around me. And then when it comes to running outside, I definitely prefer transparency mode, and that's whether if I'm running around an urban environment like a city or neighborhood where I want to hear for cars. And then the same thing goes for trail running, where I want to listen to my music, but I also want to hear my surroundings as well as be aware of other trail users. And I also live in Colorado where there's bears and mountain lions and stuff like that. And they do in fact do a great job of allowing outside sounds to come in as long as there's not a lot of wind. Now, when it comes to cycling, this is going to be a little bit different. And again, this is just my personal preference, but I only wear one earbud when I'm riding just because I want that additional awareness of having one ear completely open. The transparency mode on AirPods Pros truly are some of the best on the market in most situations, but where they suffer a bit is with wind noise. And this is basically the same thing that I've experienced with pretty much every other earbud on the market. At lower speeds, they actually do an okay job, but when I get over around 14 or 15 miles per hour or so, the increased wind noise starts to actually get piped in too much. With transparency mode, it is of course trying to actually take in outside sound into the earbud, so that makes sense, but unfortunately that outside sound is also wind. So if that's the case with transparency mode, how about active noise cancellation? Does that actually eliminate wind noise? Strangely, it's somewhat similar where they don't kind of know how to exactly handle wind noise at those higher speeds, and you may actually still hear some distortion or wind noise with ANC. Again, this is very similar to other earbuds on the market though. But how about that new adaptive audio mode where it automatically switches or tries to blend those modes? And this is actually the mode that I found works best between all those modes when it comes to handling wind noise. Now, when I say best, it's still not necessarily perfect though, and I did still hear some distortion or wind noise at higher speeds. What's kind of interesting though is how it actually handles automatically switching between ANC and transparency, where I can tell a difference, like if around a lot of heavy traffic or if there's a lot of wind, where a lot of the time it did seem to enable some level of ANC. But at the same time, it was also a little bit hard to predict, where a lot of times it would kick in some ANC around a lot of like heavy traffic, but other times it wouldn't. The adaptive audio mode definitely works best for me in just more like normal everyday situations, like if I'm in a coffee shop where if there's a lot of talking, it would enable ANC pretty consistently. And then if I got to a more quiet area, it would enable transparency mode. But in all fairness, I'm not necessarily sure if this feature was even intended for sports in the first place, and especially for sports like cycling at higher speeds with a lot of wind. So I'm not really knocking the feature or anything like that, because I do think it works decently in normal everyday conditions, but I still at least wanted to test it out to see what it would do in that sort of scenario. So overall, when it comes to cycling, I still do tend to just default to turning off all the modes, so it's not trying to do any software magic in the background or anything like that. I just found that to be the most predictable. And again, I haven't really found a pair of earbuds that actually handles wind noise perfectly with ANC or transparency mode, so I just tend to go with a more simple approach with one earbud or go with an open ear alternative like a Shokz headphone. So when it comes to their new personalized volume feature, so what this is supposed to do is adjust volume automatically based on your surroundings and your volume preferences. So for stuff like everyday use, I'm not actually sure if I can tell if it's changing volume on the fly, but that actually may be a good thing where it may be just adjusting the volume subtly based on my surroundings, and I just don't notice it, which is probably how that feature should work where it's not obvious. But when it comes to louder environments, as well as for stuff like cycling around traffic where there's a lot of ambient noise, I definitely can hear a difference where in some of those scenarios it will increase the volume. But just like the adaptive audio feature, is not necessarily 100% predictable either, where most of the time it will increase the volume, but some occasions I didn't hear anything kick in. But these also have a new conversation awareness mode where as soon as you start talking, it's designed to lower the audio playing out the earbuds themselves and then enhance the voices in front of you when you start talking to someone. And it does exactly this, and it does it quite well. And it's very responsive where it lowers the volume within around a second or two of starting to talk, and then when you eventually stop talking, the volume increases after about 5 seconds. And it is truly a conversation awareness feature where it does know if someone else is talking, where it doesn't just raise the volume again if I stop talking. If someone else is talking to me, the volume stays lowered until either of us stops talking. And I hope that kind of makes sense. And another thing I noticed is that it doesn't just lower the volume if someone just comes up to me and starts talking. I have to be the one to start talking first for it to recognize it and lower the volume, which is how I would expect the feature to work. And then another interesting thing I found with this feature is how it works with podcasts versus just music. So with music, it lowers the volume but keeps on playing during your entire conversation. But with podcasts, it actually pauses it after a few seconds and then resumes it after there's no conversation detected. So kind of interesting behavior there. Now, one drawback to this feature though is for all of us who do like to actually sing along with our music, and it will generally lower the volume when we start to sing along. So for people like me who enter the gym and just start to sing Wrecking Ball, may have to turn off that feature. So when it comes to all the new features of these new second generation AirPods Pros with USB-C, I think they certainly add some nice convenience and usability for everyday use. Now, other than the increased dust resistance, I don't necessarily think that these new features make these better sport earbuds than the previous generations, but they still do a decent job overall. Where they may not be as suitable are for things like higher wind noise, and they won't be as secure as more sports-focused earbuds, but they aren't marketed that way either. What makes these still a fantastic pick though is that they still are the best all-around choice for a pair of earbuds if you own an iPhone. They have so many other features like amazing call quality, integration with other Apple products, ANC and transparency modes which work fantastically in most situations, Find My support, and so many other things. So for me, being in the Apple ecosystem, I actually tend to grab these more than most other earbuds unless I'm like cycling or rock climbing or something like that. Now, if you already own a pair of the second gen AirPods Pro that have the Lightning connection, you're probably good to go with your existing set unless you really want the USB-C charging, the increased dust resistance, or if you plan on getting a Vision Pro headset. But if you are just now in the market for a great all-around set of earbuds and you've been considering some AirPods Pros, these are kind of hard to beat when it comes to the overall feature set, especially if you own an iPhone. Anyhow, if you are interested in picking these up, I'll have a link down in the description below where you can check these out, and that is an affiliate link that does help support the channel without costing you anything additional, but it is a nice way of just supporting content just like this. And if you found the information in this video useful, do me a favor and just quickly hit that like button, and also subscribe to the channel for plenty more videos that are just around the corner. In the meantime, have fun out there, and we will see you in the next video.